All right. Hello, hello. Hello. All right, we are live. All right, Paul, you still there? We're live on YouTube now.
I'm here.
Okay. Oh, it's a delay. Cheese. Okay, yeah, it's a delay.
Okay, good deal.
Okay.
Can you hear me now, Devon?
I can hear you now.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, Devon, and of course, want to make a special thank you to you and your group and Vester. And it's always a wonderful experience getting to work alongside you and your team. And just really want to thank you for the opportunity.
We want to thank you for being here. You're coming in from South Dakota. Did I get the state right this time?
Yeah. You got it. You're in Sioux
Yeah.
Falls, the home of Mount Rushmore.
I have to take my little one there.
It's a sight. It's a good sight to see. It's fun.
Here we go. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I was trying to. Uh-oh. Okay, well, I think we're. Okay, I just need to make you the host because you have to share your screen.
I
Uh-oh.
should I should be able to, it looks like in the middle there. Maybe I could request. Did you want me to go ahead and share it now, Devon?
Oh, wait a minute. Let me see. Oh, there we go. There we go. This is my first time doing this, going live on uh let me see. Okay, I'll make you the host. Okay, I'm about to record. I wonder if I had to record if we're live. Hey, Adrian. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're about to actually get started. Good evening, everyone, and happy Tuesday and happy Women's History Month to all of the women. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'm going to press, would allow me to record. Okay, now I'm pressing record. Okay, here we are. Good evening, everyone. I am Davon Reese, and I am the CEO and founder of Vester, which is a crowdfunding platform, as well as hotel owner. So my story is I navigated my way from hotel ownership, from the front desk to hotel ownership. And along the way, I learned about how you can use your retirement to invest in real estate, including hotels. And so we partnered with Equity Trust. I'm sure a lot of folks, I think I even see a couple folks on this call that's even worked with Equity Trust to actually use their retirement as a way to invest. Because for those who do not know, commercial real estate is more of a longer term investment. It's considered an alternative at investment outside of stocks and everything. And you can use your real estate you can use your retirement to invest in commercial real estate, such as hotels. And because it's more of a longer term investment, and typically 3 to 5 years before you get your return back, or 3 to 5 years before you get your principal plus return. So, we try to recommend to use something that is not as immediate, touching your immediate cash or savings, putting a risk out there. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just for educational purposes. We won't be talking about any investment opportunities on this webinar. We are delighted to have a special guest, Paul, here with Equity Trust, and he's talked with us several times. And I'm sure some of you all talked to him on the phone. Not only is he going to be talking about how to use your retirement to invest in asset classes such as real estate, but he's also going to be talking about a little bit briefly about 1031 exchanges as well. So I'm going to pass the baton over to him so that way he's able to share his screen. And we are also live on YouTube. So for the folks, let us know if you have any questions in the chat, and we will do our um, best to talk to everyone. So I will say, um, make sure that you let everybody know where you're coming in from. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Paul is based out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So I've never been there. So I'm on my to-do list. Has anybody ever been to South Dakota?
You guys are only missing Mount Rushmore. That's it.
Hey, that's okay. I want to go. My goal is to hit all 50 states. So hey, I want to see. I'm a history buff, so I would love to see um uh Mount Rushmore. Anybody ever been to South Dakota? Guess not.
Well, as soon as
Okay.
they come by, I'll treat them to a nice warm cup of coffee in our cold spring here.
So maybe not South Dakota, but we have South Carolina. We got Palm Beach County, Florida. A lot of folks
Now we're
say nope,
talking.
never. Hello, everyone. So yes, thank you all so much for tuning in. That's just a little icebreaker to get Paul known who's all in the crowd. Did anyone know prior to this webinar that you can use your retirement to invest in real estate?
Awesome to see all the comments pouring in.
Oh, I love it. Okay, love it. How many people did not know that you can use your retirement to invest in commercial real estate?
We
They
got
did.
one, two, three, four. We got four.
Okay.
And then we got some yeses in there too, which is awesome to see.
So how many people? Okay. So yes, heard of.
Quite a
Anybody has not heard of it? Okay, haven't heard of, but don't know how it works. Well, here you are. I love it. Okay, wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, Adrian. Okay, and everyone, thank you all so much for tuning in. We really hope that you learned. And for the folks that are on YouTube, hello, hello. Put the comments in the chat, and we will do our best to get your questions answered. So, Paul, the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Devon. Really appreciate the opportunity today. I'm very excited to go ahead and speak to self-directed IRAs as well as 1031 exchanges. And I wanted to take a moment to go ahead. Thank you in your community with Vestor and your group as well. It's always great getting to work alongside you and your investors. And as always, really appreciate the opportunity today. What we're going to be covering today, guys, we're going to learn how to access the tools that the wealthy have had at their disposal since the 70s. Right. And then we're also going to go ahead, dive into 1031 exchanges and learn how we're going to how to mitigate needlessly donating to the IRS. Rather, using those funds, continue to push them into real estate investments, deferring those capital gains taxes, rather using those funds for those real estate purchases. So a little bit about us here at Equity Institutional Services. We were formerly known as Midland Trust Company up until August of 2023, when we were then rebranded to Equity Institutional Services. Um, Since then, we have bolstered our assets under custody quite intensely. I know here on the screen, you're going to see a $58 billion number for our assets under custody and administration, but currently that number sits at $82 billion of assets under custody and administration. So we have really experienced a large amount of growth since going ahead and becoming a part of the equity trust company family. We have many different offices located around the United States. So no worries for those of you who don't like the cold. We don't need to worry about that Cleveland, South Dakota office or Chicago office. We can focus more so on that Fort Myers, Florida office where that weather is going to be much more temperate. But we have quite an extensive history in going ahead and serving groups. And really, that's what we were known as at Midland Trust as well, is being the premier custodian when it comes to making these private equity real estate investments into things such as hotels. It is one of the most common asset classes that will be used for those alternative investments and a way to go ahead and diversify your funds, which we'll get into here later. Um, we have quite a few different channels within our entity, within Equity Trust Company. I belong to our institutional services teams, which really focuses on going ahead and ensuring that that client experience is very seamless for those limited partners looking to go ahead and deploy their retirement capital, as well as Devon mentioned, our 1031 exchange team, which is a qualified intermediary, allowing those investors to go ahead and defer those capital gains taxes along their journey. Now, one thing I want to call out here on this page is that the funds that we custody, the $82 billion, are all assets under custody, which means we're the bank on behalf of that individual investor. And that's really where we went ahead and built ourselves into this market. Our entity has been around now for over 50 years. Equity Trust has went ahead and served real estate investors when they're looking to go ahead and use their retirement funds to make investments. So we really carved a niche out of going ahead and helping investors create that journey on their path to financial wellness, where a lot of custodians won't necessarily do that. I mean, we just had the Super Bowl here last month. I'm sure a lot of you saw quite a few Super Bowl commercials from large financial institutions. They're concerned with a different metric. They don't care about assets under custody nearly as much as they care about assets under management. That's where they make their revenue. That's where they'll go ahead and really create the wealth for their entity is by going ahead and advising, getting groups into their proprietary mutual funds, exchange traded funds, the S&P 500 and the like is really where they'll go ahead and get paid, which is why they will not go ahead and service the alternative asset industry, which is really where we'll go ahead and help out a lot of individuals. So what is a self-directed IRA? A self-directed IRA is an IRA just like any other. At its core, it's an IRA. That self-directed term is a marketing term that we use as a way to go ahead and let people know that we can actually help them get into alternative assets. Now, real estate is popular, but so are other asset classes, such as private equity, venture capital, futures, foreign exchange trading, secured notes, where people are lending out their funds, and so many more creative strategies that groups are using to go ahead and make investments. At the end of the day, a custodian is still required. So you'll still need that third party to go ahead and use when you direct your retirement funds. You just want to make sure you're working with a custodian that allows you to invest alternative into other asset classes as well. Now, there are many groups out there who will also use this self-directed IRA term, and they don't necessarily mean it in good faith. What they mean when they say self-directed is that you can self-direct it into any of their menu options of stocks that you want, not that you can self-direct it into other asset classes. So I do want to call out that misconception. Now, there's quite a few different advantages when you're going ahead and looking to use retirement funds to invest into a hotel syndication. One is going to be the tax advantages. These retirement funds that you have are some of the most tax advantaged dollars that you hold. One of the biggest benefits to going ahead and investing through them is that you're not going to be paying capital gains taxes on your return, and that you're going to be investing in either a tax deferred or tax-free ecosystem to go ahead and create that compounding wealth. Now, that being said, there's going to be differences between the pre-tax and post-tax accounts, like the traditional IRA versus the Roth IRA. And we're going to break that down in depth here in a little. But there's so many different types of asset classes that open up once when you look into the self-directed world. Other things such as notes, hedge funds, private equity offerings that typically will encapsulate real estate as well. And then the fees, right? So when it comes to our fee schedule, it is flat and fixed. So when an investor will go ahead, open an account, and make an investment, what they can expect to pay is $555 in first year fees and $350 annually thereafter per asset they're invested into. Which, when you compare that to a traditional custodian, they're typically charging 2% on a management fee. So 2% of all of your assets on an annual basis that they're managing on your behalf. And then they'll also typically go ahead and charge a 20% performance fee, where they will go ahead and receive 20% of the performance that they've managed for your dollars, your monies on your behalf. So there is typically quite a cost savings when it comes to that fee schedule as well. And then a huge benefit, the bottom of this pyramid here, true diversification. I mean, by far, this is one of the biggest reasons that many Americans will go ahead and consider getting into private equity with their retirement funds, is because currently they're completely exposed to the public market. When you look at most Americans, and when you look at most Americans who are millionaires, most Americans hold at least 70% of that wealth in one of those vehicles, that 401k, IRA. There's so many other types that we'll get into here in a little bit for different people in different places of life. But this is really where a lot of individuals will hold their wealth. And the sad thing is it's typically all pushed into the public world. Now, financial advisors will attempt to diversify it into different things like exchange traded funds versus mutual funds and try to get you different exposure. But at the end of the day, you're completely exposed to the public market, right? So whether it's a geopolitical event, whether it's a worldwide resource event, what have you, a lot of those things will affect the S&P 500 and the Meg 7 that's at the top of it. So this would be a way to go ahead, get into a hard asset that would appreciate in value, where you would believe you would get a better return while also diversifying that retirement portfolio and moving exposure into the private market. That way, all of those eggs aren't in one basket. Rather, you're moving them into multiple baskets. Illiquidity is another popular reason that people will go ahead and use their retirement funds. A lot of investors, whether they invest early or not, these are funds that they're able to go ahead and deploy without changing their day-to-day life, which is something that is huge. I mean, quality of life is certainly something to be considered when going about in your day-to-day activities, what have you. This is a way to go ahead, create an investment with a longer term hold, which typically pairs well with retirement funds, that 3 to 5 year horizon, because you're not able to touch these funds until you're 59 and a half. So there is a benefit there as well in the liquidity, because you're not able to fear sell, as opposed to if you were holding stocks or a highly liquid asset, it would open up the availability to go ahead and move positions at triggering events, which at times can lead to fear sales. So tax mitigation portion here, I want to dive into this. So the capital gains taxes don't apply. That being said, you are not able to personally take advantage of the depreciation when you go to file your own tax return. And I want to call that out because the IRA is going to be the subscriber, not the individual. It's the IRA making the investment, which is what keeps all this above board. And then job change. The most frequent reason an investor will go ahead and pick up the phone and give me a call is because they change employers. Once when you change employment, you have access to that retirement capital to invest it as you see fit. And you can do what's known as a direct rollover to then invest it alternatively. Now, we'll get into the active employer portion later. Typically, it's off the table, but any of those former employer retirement funds can certainly be used as you see fit. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's actually dive into some different account types here. So there are many, many different types of plans that can actually be pushed into the IRA to fund your investment. Qualified annuities are able to be rolled over into an IRA vehicle. Another type of account, a thrift savings plan. I just got off a phone call today with an investor who was a uniformed guard member. He's a veteran, so he has access to this thrift savings plan. He's going to be doing a direct rollover, pushing it into the self-directed IRA to then invest into a real estate syndication. An awesome account that we give to those in the Air Force, Army, the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and now Space Force as well. As we dive into some of these other accounts, most of you are going to recognize the 401k, right? It's one of the most common plans in the world here in the here in the United States. I'll correct myself there. But there's many other types of accounts as well. A 403b is going to be an account that is going to be for somebody at the public school system, right? Or working for a non-for-profit, where a 457b is going to be for government and state and local officials, right? So think like police officers, firefighters, mayors, etc. But as we dive into IRA accounts here, there's quite a difference between the different types of IRA accounts that you can move forward with and make that alternative investment with. The first one I want to really speak to is going to be the traditional IRA. It's going to be a pre-tax account. And when I refer to pre-tax, what I mean by that is once when you take those distributions after starting at 59 and a half, and you start moving funds out of the IRA account into your personal checkings or savings account, you're going to create a taxable event when you pull those funds out. And it's going to be taxed at the ordinary income rate in the year you take that distribution. Now, starting at age 73, what's going to happen is known as a required minimum distribution. That's when Uncle Sam starts tapping you in the shoulder and he starts asking for some of that tax revenue. Right. So that's when you're going to be forced to go ahead, start pulling funds out of that account to dwindle it. Now, the contribution for a traditional IRA in 2026 is going to be $7,500. If you're 50 or older, you're able to have a catch-up contribution pushing it up to $8,600. Now, this Roth IRA account is something I get very excited about because it's a post-tax vehicle and where you're able to create compounding wealth in a tax-free ecosystem, which is very unique. And there's not a lot of places in the world you could go ahead and do that. And the reason it's attractive is because all of those earnings, all of those gains, all of that compounding interest, you're able to pull out post 59 and a half without creating a taxable event. These funds are not taxed at ordinary income. Rather, they come right in your account and can be deployed as you see fit. So they're a wonderful tool to go ahead and actually create generational wealth, not just wealth, but wealth that can go ahead and be passed down to children. Now, with this Roth IRA, you're also able to go ahead and actually take tax-free and penalty-free distributions after a 5-year timeline. You're actually able to pull out those contributions you make. So it is a sort of semi-liquid account in a sense when you're able to go ahead and take those distributions from those contributions you've made 5 years prior. Now, there is a modified adjusted gross income limit for this, which maxes out at $230,000 if you're filing jointly. And if you're single, it's going to be right around that $146,000 threshold. But there's been a way around that since 2010. And it's known as the backdoor Roth conversion. So what a person would do is they would open a traditional IRA, fund it because it doesn't have that income limit. They would create a taxable event. For example, here in 2026, let's use the contribution limit of $7,500. They would then go ahead, convert it, which would mean that 7,500 is going to be seen as the IRS as a bonus check to be tacked on to your total earned income for the year. But now that $7,500 now pushes itself into a Roth account where you now have post-tax funds that are tax-free and can multiply. The SEP IRA is going to be a pre-tax vehicle similar to the traditional IRA. This is going to be for business owners. The SEP stands for the Simplified Employee Pension Plan. Now, this is going to be limited to groups with 25 employees or less. Now, the contribution for this is going to get capped at 25% of the salary or $72,000, whichever one's going to be lesser. The Simple IRA stands for is Savings Incentive Match Plan for employees. Now, with the Simple, you're able to have more employees. You can have up to 100 or less, but those contribution limits are going to be lower, right? So they're not going to be nearly as high If you're going to be 50 plus, that catch-up contribution is going to be 21K. If you're going to be under 50, you're going to be maxed out at 17,000. Now, there is another type of account out there that's known as a solo 401k, which you can qualify for if you're a business owner with earned income and you have no common law employees except your spouse. Now, a reason a person would go ahead and consider a solo 401k is because of a higher contribution limit. They're able to put over $70,000 in a post-tax Roth bucket, which is just a very quick way to put funds into a post-tax position. There is no other quicker way to go ahead and compound those Roth positions. So if you are a business owner that doesn't have any common law employees, you're a solopreneur, something to go ahead and consider. Two other accounts that aren't IRAs and that's not a 401k that can also be used to invest into real estate: an ESA, an education savings account, and then an HSA, a health savings account. An ESA is going to be post-tax. It's similar to the Roth vehicle, which is pretty cool. But it's typically used for education expenses, qualifying education expenses, right? So people will typically go ahead, create them for their children, stash money in there for when the kids go off to college, have to buy books, get the new laptop, get the new software for their programming class, what have you, right? But say you have a really intelligent kid, say he's a national merit scholar or Rhodes Scholar, what have you. Say he or she's on a full ride to an institution. They don't have to worry about their books. Well, here's a way now you could invest alternatively. And I've even seen parents do this with health savings accounts as well. Being able to go ahead, contribute to a family limit. But let's say the family's healthy. They're exercising regularly. They're eating great. Their bodies are nourished and they don't have any issues. They're not going and seeing the doctor very often. Well, you could also use that health savings account as well to invest into those private equity opportunities. So other awesome accounts that can be leveraged. Now, an IRA that doesn't get brought up a lot would be an inherited IRA. Now, this is an IRA somebody receives after somebody you know passes, who has you listed as a beneficiary. Now, really important, if you're married, if you have a spouse, you want to list your spouse as your primary beneficiary. And here's the reason. If your spouse inherits the IRA, they can go ahead and seamlessly transfer it into their own IRA. Super easy for them. But let's say you named your kids as your beneficiaries instead of your spouse. Well, if it's a non-spouse that receives that IRA, now a decade window starts, a 10-year timeline into which that account needs to be fully distributed. So if possible, want to make sure we're leaving the IRA to our spouse. Now, a few different considerations to use when navigating through that IRA. As we mentioned earlier, you got to have a custodian, no ifs, ands, or buts. It's an IRS requirement. The IRA is the one making the investment, not the individual. And all funds need to return and flow back and forth to and from the IRA, which allows you to keep the advantage of not paying the capital gains tax through that vehicle. Typical lead time depends on how you're funding the account. If you're moving from IRA to IRA, very seamless, typically takes a week and a half to 2 weeks. If you're moving over via rollover from any other account, typically takes 3 weeks, as we will actually receive a check from your current custodian, and then we'll hold on to it for a week until it clears. Typically, active employer plans are off limits, but there is something known as an in-service rollover, where at times exceptions will be made for those investors. So always worth asking, hey, can I do an in-service rollover? The worst case scenario, your plan administrator tells you no, you're in the same exact seat you were yesterday. Simple 3-step process. You would open the account, fund the account either through contribution or another retirement account, and then we would go ahead and help you get subscribed into the offering. Now, another thing I want to touch on today with you all is a checkbook IRA. Now, what this is it's an IRA that's owned outright by a single member LLC. And that allows the IRA owner to have full control over their retirement funds. We would actually go ahead, help establish the LLC, the operating agreement, articles of organization, the EIN, the initial state filing, We would go ahead, help completely launch it because it does need to be a new business with no prior business activity to get connected to that IRA, but it would be a seamless way for you to invest in real estate with having limited liability protection. So that LLC veil is going to be huge for anybody who's going to own real estate property. If you're looking to purchase real estate property, you need a checkbook IRA or that limited liability veil. Not required, but highly encouraged. The transaction speed and bank account connectivity is going to be the other very advantageous part of the checkbook IRA. You'll actually have a bank account hooked up to the LLC that you can go ahead and use to invest into real estate. Makes it super easy. Here is what that structure would actually look like. So we would go ahead, help assist you from moving funds over from another custodian into an IRA or 401k vehicle here. We would then assist you with creating that single member LLC, getting it off the ground, and establishing a bank account with it at one of our banking partners, Titan Bank. We would then go ahead, move funds via wire from the IRA account here into the bank account of the LLC, from where you could then invest as you see fit by literally writing a check and having a debit card to go ahead and process. So think of sheriff auctions, what have you. You're actually able to bid on real estate in real time with that bank account. You're not going to need to wait on a custodian to send a wire or pay an invoice. Very nice for those who want to go ahead, create short-term, long-term leases, Airbnb, Verbo properties, what have you, right? Important part I want to call out on this page, all investment related expenses and profits need to flow from that real estate investment to the LLC bank account, right? We're not personally using these funds. We're still using them for investing. It's an important part. Now, here are some considerations you need to keep in mind when using that IRA. The first one I really want to hit on is disqualified parties. The IRS is going to call out right away, here are the parties you're not allowed to invest with. The first one's going to be myself, which leads me to point two here. So no self-dealing or manager. Say for instance, let's use the single member LLC as an example, right? I'm not able to go ahead and pay myself a manager fee for finding the tenants and leasing the property. I'm allowed to manage the LLC, but I can't pay myself a fee for doing so. The same would apply to selling real estate I personally own to that LLC the IRA owns, right? I'm not able to push anything that's in my name as I'm a prohibited disqualified party to my IRA. The IRS would see it as a forced early distribution, right? Now, the other parties that are going to be off limits, my spouse, so my wife would also be off the table. Any of my direct ancestors, so my parents and my grandparents are also going to be off the table. My direct descendants, so any of my kids, as well as their marriages, so my son and daughter-in-laws, and their offspring, their fourth. So my grandkids, great grandkids down that vertical lineage. We're going to want to avoid transacting with them with these IRA accounts and doing business. Handling of funds is important, as I touched on earlier. No commingling, right? Distributions need to be taken through the custodian. And I want to walk you guys through that example. So let's fast forward. Let's say I'm 59 and a half. I'm ready to start taking distributions, start moving funds out of my retirement account into my personal wallet. I would not want to go ahead and send a wire from this LLC bank account to my personal checking under any circumstance. And the same is true of my personal checking to the LLC bank account. Rather, I'm going to use the tools that I have to succeed, which is going to be us as a custodian. Any distribution that you take needs to be reportable to the custodian. So if you wanted to take those funds out of the account, you would send a wire from the LLC back to us, take the distribution through us. So it's reportable to the IRS. The same is true of pushing funds in. Say you want to contribute for the current tax year into your IRA account. Don't contribute directly from your personal account into this LLC account. Rather, contribute through us as the custodian, have us send the wire to the LLC bank account. And then the responsibility, right? This is a single member LLC. So we're talking about an LLC, a business, right? The account owner would need to be responsible for all those investing decisions. We're talking about a self-directed IRA account. And then again, the accounting. So you need to keep a ledger with that bank account that's hooked up to your IRA, making sure you're doing credits and debits there. Now, the steps that are going to go ahead and get added here is creating the LLC and hooking up the bank account. That's what's going to change between this and a typical SDIRA. Now, I also want to go ahead and dive into 1031 exchanges as another great tool to go ahead and mitigate those tax payments to the IRS, trying to figure out a way to keep those dollars in your pocket, compounding into future real estate investments so that we can continue to build wealth. Let me move this very quick. My apologies, gang. Alrighty. So what is a 1031 exchange? It's a part of the Internal Revenue Code, straight out of Section 1031 in the Internal Revenue Code. So it lives right there within our tax code and is one of the biggest legal loopholes for deferring capital gains taxes. And this is only available to real estate investors, which is amazing. Um, Now you need to go ahead and you need to replace into another property. And what I mean by that is a real interest in real estate. So if you want to go ahead, perform a 1031 exchange and defer all those capital gains taxes from your sale, then you need to purchase another piece of property to reinvest into. That's what keeps this above board. Now, here are some rules that we can dive into and that we're going to cover here later on in this presentation as well. The first is the net selling rule, really uncovering what do we need to get to? How much property do I need to buy? What's that amount? Really uncovering that. The like kind investment rule, one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to 1031 exchanges. A qualified intermediary, what's that needed entity to make this all happen? And then the day rules, which I want to dive into right away. So when it comes to a 1031 exchange, there are rules and there is a strict timeline. And it's one of the biggest hurdles investors chase when looking to go ahead and avoid those taxes. The first one is the 45-day rule, and that occurs 45 days after your first closing. At that point, you will need to identify the properties that you want to replace into from this 1031 exchange into another. We need to have it by day 45. Up until day 45, you can change out those properties, you can remove properties, add properties, what have you. But come day 45, those are going to be set in stone. And those are going to be the properties that we're going to need to replace into to complete this exchange. The 180-day rule is the length of time into which you have to do this exchange. From closing to closing, it needs to happen in 180 days. The only thing that could ever get you extension would need to be an act of God. For instance, Hurricane Katrina, right? It would need to affect many states in a heavy fashion to where residents are going to be displaced and to where multi-state lines are going to be truly affected. Now, one of the first items I want to really get into is the net selling price. How much do I need to replace? It's going to be your gross selling price less any of those pertinent closing costs. So think realtors commissions, doc stamps, title, closing costs, anything that's going to be needed to make the sale, you're able to go ahead and lessen. That net sales price is the amount that you need to go ahead and purchase to completely defer all of your capital gains taxes on your sale. Now, one of the benefits of the 1031 exchange is not only that you're deferring capital gains taxes, but you also get a stepped up basis for your heirs. So if you were to ever pass holding on to that same 1031 property, your descendants would very much so be thankful because they're going to get a great stepped up basis on that property, which is going to be huge for their financial journey as well. Now, what does like kind mean? Another huge misconception in this industry. A lot of people think they need to replace into the same asset class in real estate, which is simply untrue. What like kind means is that you own a real interest in real property. You can move from whatever asset class so long as you own the property you're replacing into and you're on that deed. So it could be from commercial to single family. It could be single family to a hotel. It could be a hotel to farmland. There's so many different types and shapes of real estate out there that can be exchanged. But the most important thing is that it is real estate. It does not matter what type of asset class it is. And then what is that QI? That's what we are. We're a net neutral third party who's escrowing the funds. So that would be our role, is going ahead, serving as that escrow, which is going to keep this above board. the IRS requires that net neutral third party, right? So they will require that independent agent who's going to go ahead and facilitate it on behalf of the taxpayer. It can't be the attorney, it can't be the CPA, it can't be the closing company. It needs to be an independent third party to these sales. Now, some 1031 opportunities. So many different areas. I've seen so many different creative 1031 exchanges, and they're used for many different reasons for many different investors in different seasons of their lives. One of the more common reasons though is to find a property that cash flows, right? To go ahead and to exchange into something where you can set your watch on on money coming in. And I've seen that very commonly as I'm here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where there's a lot of farmland. There's a lot of undeveloped real estate here. In a lot of, in sometimes a lot of farm families will go ahead, complete a 1031 exchange as those families age, as kids tend to become lawyers, doctors, go out in the professional world, leave the farm. A lot of farms are being 1031 exchanged into commercial residential acquisitions where those aging farmers now have a way to go ahead and cash flow into retirement. Consolidation is also very popular, as is diversification. I'll typically see consolidation more unless we're moving out of a business or a piece of commercial property. For instance, I'll see diversification happen. I'll use an example of an attorney I assisted over in the East Coast. He sold a $10 million office, his law office, and he used it to go ahead and purchase 3 single-family homes in Florida. So he wanted to go ahead. He was stepping away from his firm. He was retiring, wanted to cash flow, and that's how he went ahead and diversified his holdings. Consolidation, as I mentioned, typically more common. I'll typically see this used in the single-family home space where a real estate investor will go ahead, use this strategy to roll up into a bigger property. Maybe it's a multifamily complex, a commercial property, what have you. I'll also see this used though for acquiring less intensive management property. Now, it typically isn't vacant land on the right. It's typically what's known as a Delaware statutory trust. Now, this is the one vehicle outside of a real interest in real estate that you're able to go ahead and replace into. Typically, it's going to be used for aging taxpayers who don't want to actively manage anymore. They either have a single family portfolio, they have something that's cash flowing, they're sick of replacing the toilets, they're sick of getting the phone call in midnight, right? So what they'll do is they'll typically replace into something known as a Delaware statutory trust, which is going to be a small fraction of a pie they're going to own along with many other investors and an entity that's going to manage that on their behalf. We've seen this come up here, especially during COVID. This was a huge reason for a lot of people moving markets, particularly from less landlord-friendly states into more landlord-friendly states. That was a very common theme we saw here in the early 2020s, was people looking to go ahead, move markets into better areas where they're working with different communities that that have their same goals in mind, frankly. Now, I want to make sure here to save some time to open it up to a Q&A. I want to help answer questions that you guys might have regarding self-directed IRAs, 1031 exchanges, and how we can go ahead, defer those capital gains taxes to reinvest in real estate.
Oh, there's some questions in the chat. Okay, it says, so I'm on a thrift savings plan. Also, should I move my money into a Roth IRA opposed to the traditional?
Good question, Carmen. So a Roth conversion, I had a conversation about a Roth conversion this morning, funny enough. So a Roth conversion is typically used if the taxpayer can go ahead and stomach that upcoming tax bill in the year that they convert. One of the huge advantages of going ahead and committing that Roth conversion is your earnings are now compounding tax-free. which is very, very attractive, especially if you're making investments into private equity where you're going to see returns in the teens as compared to the single digits. Um, to answer your question, Carmen, if you have additional funds that are earmarked to pay that tax bill, I would very much so seriously consider it because now you're going to be able to make an investment that can compound in a tax-free environment.
Okay, we
I
have
do.
another question. It says, how much does your company charge to set up the LLC, operating agreement, and account setup?
Okay, so for the checkbook IRA portion, for us to go ahead, do the articles of organization, operating agreement, all of those things, we'll charge $12.95 in a first year fee, and then we'll charge $350 annually thereafter. Now, that being said, if the investor has experience creating LLCs and they're familiar with manager managed LLCs, the investor could also create that entity as well. It just needs to be a newly established entity, not one with any prior business activity. If you were to go that route, you would just be paying for the IRA, which would be $555 in first year fees and then $350 annually thereafter. Great question, Carmen.
Those are the only two questions that I saw. Any other questions? Well, that was a good presentation. So what does the process look like if they want to work with Equity Trust? How does
Yeah,
that work?
I would say the very first process is to go ahead and reach out, whether it's via phone call or text. My cell phone number is right there, 605-799-8620. I'm also available via email as well. And then what I can do for you guys as well is I can go ahead and put my calendar link in the chat. That way, if anyone has any specific questions, they want to have a goals-based conversation, would be more than willing to go ahead and help me with them on a one-on-one setting.
And also, is there a special package if you let them know that I referred you?
There is. So we do have a promo code with Devon, so you are able to get savings. So that original amount I quoted you, it's going to be less than that.
So okay, so you have your so please feel free to contact Paul. I will say that I wouldn't wait until you find a deal. I would probably go ahead and start that process now because sometimes it can take up to 30 days. And so if timing is of the essence, meaning the deal has a deadline or for whatever reason, then I would try to move as fast as you, well, I would say fast as you can, but I would just start the process now instead of waiting,
Right.
until you find a deal and then you have to try to, move and set it up so at least just get the account started. And then once the deal comes, then the paperwork and stuff, we can help out with that. Um, but I think that was it. Because I know a lot of times the questions are case by case basis because it's based on, if, their particular circumstance, where they are in their job. I know the questions I probably get a lot is what's the difference between the self-directed IRA and the QRP, which I'm sure you touched on a little bit. So that's okay. So Paul put his information in the chat for you to contact him. We do have a relationship. They're one of our partners, so we appreciate you all. We've been working with you for a couple of years now, so we thank you. And I guess if there are not any more questions, you all have an amazing Tuesday evening, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. We
Thank,
appreciate you. Thank
thank
you.
you,
I hope
Devon.
I
Thank
hope
you
you
so
all
much.
learned a lot. Let Paul know that you learned something. So and feel free to contact. Oh, what's the code? Just let.
Yes, let me drop it in the chat.
Okay, all right. And then also, if you just contact Paul and just let him know that I sent you or that you learned about equity trust from me, then they'll put the code in. But yeah, go ahead and put the code in the chat.
thank you all for your patience here as I get that.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that I know that you all learned something. Oh,
All
I'm
right.
glad it was great. Awesome. That's amazing. Okay, Vester50. So that's the code. Feel free to use it. And that way you'll be able to take advantage of some savings. We appreciate you all. And yes, you'll get a copy of the recording, everyone who signed up. So we appreciate you all, and you all have an amazing evening. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Devon. Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye bye.